At Conway there. Now, today, the Housing Secretary, Michael Gove, has said he's prepared to use legal means to ensure property developers pay for the removal of dangerous cladding on residential buildings. The plans are expected to cost around £4 billion and would see builders cover the costs instead of leaseholders. This would be in addition to the government commitment of around £5 billion for repairs so far. It would include buildings between 11 and 18 metres tall, which have so far been ineligible for government support to remove unsafe cladding.
To those who missold dangerous products like cladding or insulation, to those who cut corners to save cash as they developed or refurbished people's homes, and to those who sought to profiteer from the consequences of the Grenfell tragedy, we are coming for you. We will change grant funding guidance so that shared owners affected by this crisis can more easily sublet their properties and encourage lenders and landlords to approve subletting arrangements. And in the period before long-term arrangements are put in place, I will work with colleagues across government to make sure leaseholders are protected from forfeiture and eviction because of historic costs. Innocent leaseholders must not shoulder the burden.
Let's speak to our chief political correspondent, John Craig. Tough words, weren't they, to developers who are perhaps shirking their responsibilities? We are coming for you.
Yes, and at one point later on, in response to a Tory backbencher, he said, we're going to round up the wrong uns. Sounds like he's taking on the role of sheriff, taking on the outlaws in the building industry. But yes, tough words, putting them on notice, he said during his initial statement. We're coming for you. He got a pretty broad welcome from MPs of both sides, although the Labour shadow levelling up secretary, that's Lisa Nandy, fairly new in that post, has picked up on something in a letter from the Treasury Chief Secretary Simon Clarke to Mr Gove at the end of last week on Friday, a letter seen by Sky News and other news outlets, which prompted a rebuke for Mr Gove from the Speaker, Lindsay Hoyle, earlier. In that letter, Mr Gove's been talking in the chamber about possibly taxing developers who don't pay up. And as Lisa Nandy has pointed out in Mr Clarke's letter, it says, well, hold on, taxation's a matter for the Treasury. And Lisa Nandy has tweeted after their exchanges here, the government's promise to fix the building crisis is unravelling in front of our eyes. That's because she's saying that Mr Gove can't force developers to pay via a tax. But a lot of MPs were agreed that what Mr Gove has proposed is an improvement on what his predecessor, Robert Jenrick, was proposing. Now, there are claims that from political opponents that Mr Jenrick was a bit too chummy and a bit too cosy with property developers, some of whom, of course, are big Conservative Party donors. And Mr Gove, of course, was sent into this department partly to not just sort out the planning laws, which many Tories blame for their defeat in the Chesham and Amersham by-election, but also this cladding crisis, which MPs of all parties had Conservative MP after Conservative MP give quite sort of harrowing stories about the injustices faced by their constituents in tower blocks. Cladding, not just cladding, but other safety issues like fire escapes and so on. And so Mr Gove, who does have a reputation as something of a problem solver in Whitehall, has got a good response, apart from on that point about taxing developers who don't pay up. But there is some government money, but it is the developers who'll have to pay the bulk of the costs. And as we've heard, he used colourful phrases like, I'm putting them on notice, we're coming for you, and indeed at one point, I'm going to round up the wrong uns.
OK, John in Westminster, thank you. Do stay with us here on the News Hour.